Hello everyone. Today we're going to be going over autopilot stability tests. So, the reason for these tests are to determine whether your aircraft can fly well with or without autopilot, and if it passes these tests, we recommend that you use the autopilot for future testing. If it does not work, it means you're either going to have to figure out what's causing your autopilot not to work. That's probably an issue in PlaneMaker that you can fix and that Atticus will go over in his videos. But if you can't fix it, you're going to have to hand fly all of them. And that's annoying and it creates error. So, especially if you're trying to get repeatable results. But assuming your autopilot does work, and assuming the F-14 autopilot does work, we're going to show you how to do that today. So first thing you're going to want to do is hopefully slow your aircraft down just a bit. And actually, let's pause it because we can do that. And then find the autopilot in your aircraft. Okay, let's see where you are. Oh, here it is. So, here's some of the information is missing. We might end up doing this in the F-15 because it's easier, or the F-18. But let's see. Heading, auto throttle, altitude. All right, yeah, we're doing this in the F-15. Okay, so it is important to note that planes and X-plane actually have more complex autopilots than fighters do in real life, which is funny, but we'll do F-18. And bug. And okay, cool. All right, so here's the F-18. This is your standard F-18E. Nothing too special about it. Okay, and here is our autopilot. So these little buttons on the display will light up and tell us different things. Now your autopilot won't look like this out of PlaneMaker, and that's mainly why I wanted to use the F-14 one before, but that one wasn't easy enough to understand and won't look a thing like your autopilot, so I just decided that we weren't going to use it. Okay, so from here, we have these little dials below. This will determine your speed with the auto throttle. This will determine your heading in degrees. This will determine your vertical speed, and I believe feet per second. I'm not sure about that. And this will determine your altitude. You guys can look into this one yourself or just figure it out through experimentation. All right, so auto throttle, or no, all right, first rule about the autopilot, never set it on the ground. Don't use it to take off. That's just a bad idea. We're going to get into the air real quick. Also, something I've neglected to mention in previous videos. Turn on the sound when you're flying. I have the sound off when I'm flying so that you guys can hear me and I'm not shouting over a jet engine, or at least a simulated one. But turn on your audio. It'll give you a bit of extra, it'll give you a better idea of where your jet is because you'll be able to hear how much your aircraft is working, where your engines are at, and if you don't have time to glance at that indicator, you can kind of hear it. So it's not 100% reliable, and I don't recommend using it for testing to get data, but when landing and taking off, it is very nice to have. So we're in the air. Our heading is 259 degrees. So I'm going to change that heading to 270 because I want to fly down the canyon and up and away. And we can use our autopilot to climb, but it doesn't always work, or it won't work on the ground. All right, let's say I want to fly at. You can see it's changing there on your HUD as well. At 500 knots. That's below the speed of sound, so we won't encounter any instabilities because I do know from previous experience that the F-18 does get a bit unstable at supersonic speeds in X-plane. Not in real life. X-plane models aren't always 100% accurate. So from there, we can turn on auto throttle, turn on heading, and then it will turn on altitude. And then if we switch on autopilot, then it will turn all these settings on. Okay, 270 wasn't enough. Let's go 280. And we can make adjustments while we're in the air and or while the autopilot is on. And 85. Okay, so we can make adjustments while we're in the air. And you'll notice that our aircraft is actually climbing to meet this thing. That's something special about the F-18 autopilot. Most autopilots don't actually do that. This video will mainly just be about teaching you guys how to work the autopilot, and then your job is to use it in actual testing. So you can see that we're now starting to level off as we get close to our target. The problem with X-Plane Autopilot, we'll see if it does it here, is that sometimes it doesn't work this well, and it will overshoot where you want to stop. Oh, it's working perfectly here. Okay, this is surprising actually. It shouldn't be, but it is. Sometimes it will overshoot what you've set, and at that point, it will start making what looks like a sine graph. It's really cool, but it's not good for testing because it introduces a lot of drag that you don't need, and it will be extreme, more or less extreme depending on the aircraft. All right, so you can see it's actually stopped at 300 feet. I did not expect that to happen. We're just going to bring this up to 10,000 feet just so that we don't hit any of these mountains. But, oh boy. Okay. All right, so I need to reset it. That's what happened. All right, so now that it's on, let's bring... All right, so the way vertical speed works is that you set the number here to bring you up to a certain height. And you can see here, these are both on at the same time. Depending on the autopilot you've set up and X-Plane, that may or may not happen. Because it will either only want to have autopilot on or vertical speed on. Because if you think about it, if your vertical speed is 1500 and your altitude says to hold in one place, it can't do both. So we're also going to want to turn our autopilot on, or our auto throttle and heading on, so that we don't lose our heading. But you can see how this would become important during testing if we want to keep it flying a straight path with, accuracy. Because if you're hand flying, then you may introduce inaccuracies along the way. Here's the thing. If your autopilot isn't accurate, then this doesn't work, and you will have to hand fly it because that's the alternative. Other than that, this is pretty much how you use the autopilot. It's your job to make the autopilot in the cockpit, so set it up so it works for you. But Atticus should show you guys how to set all of this up in PlaneMaker, but that's just how you work it in real life. All right, so you see that now we approached this, our vertical speed just turned off because this is a very, very complex and well-made autopilot. It's going to make sure we fly well. The other thing is terrain tracking, which also works. All of these are mainly for landing. Don't use them because they just don't work in X-Plane 9. But terrain tracking, you can get low to the ground, and then it will just fly over terrain for you within reason. Again, there are limitations to the way this program works. If you expect it to fly you from inside that valley over that mountain suddenly, it's not going to work. Especially if it flies you over that mountain and there's another mountain behind it and it's already diving to track the terrain. It's just not going to work, and you're going to have to trust yourself to turn off the autopilot and fly the aircraft yourself. All right. Other than that, that is a very long explanation on how autopilot works. Very redundant. I may edit some of that out, but I probably won't. Again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, bring them up with me during the meeting or email us. And other than that, have a good day, stay safe, and I'll see you for the next lesson. Bye, guys.